Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our favourite session on my favourite topic on connectivity. Thrilled to be joined by a panel of experts. So what we'll do is just go through the panel for an introduction, your name and where you're from.
Perfect. Courtney Callicutt with the Boeing Company. I'm Regional Director of Cabin and Features Marketing, based at our 787 facility in Charleston, South Carolina.
And I'm Eva, President of Connectivity within Eutelsat, so basically the network provider of everything that goes in the air.
I'm Dave Falberg. I'm Senior Vice President of Sales for International, effectively looking after all of the business aviation business outside of the Americas, based out of Farnborough in the UK.
Hi, I'm Mel Berry. I'm the Chief Customer Officer in Vueling, which is part of the IAG Group, and I'm based in Barcelona.
Hello, I'm Reza Rasoulian, Senior Vice President and General Manager at Hughes Network Systems, leading commercial and business aviation.
Great. So we're going to spend the next 45 minutes talking about reliable in-flight connectivity in a shifting market. So I just wanted to start off by saying, we believe in life the only certainty in life is death and taxes. I think another certainty is that in-flight connectivity will change and continue to always change. So on that note, I wanted to talk about the IFC landscape and how it's shifting across the GEO, LEO, MEO and A to G air-to-ground network. So I'll hand over to Reza first to get your thoughts on how it's shifting and what that means for your customers.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I think we're laser focused on creating the best connectivity environment for our customers. So for commercial aviation, I think certainly we have certain deals right now that blend GEO and LEO. And I think we're also moving into a future announcement that we had yesterday to a LEO architecture as well. So networks are evolving. Networks are, let's say, limitless. I mean, every day there's probably a new announcement for this network or that network. So we see in our commercial aviation clients that there's certain decision fatigue. So our vision, our philosophy is, we have great networks today that we're leveraging and serving, business aviation with our OneWeb, Eutelsat OneWeb partner. Again, there's a lot of robust systems coming to fruition. So our vision is you really get the benefit of all of these systems and blend them together with our Fusion platform.
Okay, great, thank you. Over to Eva, how is this shift impacting what you're doing?
And I think a lot building on one of our really good partners, so Hughes. I think what we're really seeing today, and I think it's also important to recognize that being able to connect in the air is not something totally new. Mm-hmm. It has shifted a lot when LEO came into play because of the low latency. So suddenly being able to deliver a broadband experience while you're traveling is sort of the new part. But there is not only in-flight connectivity, there is also all of the operational systems. And in order for all of this to really come forward, also in the digital world where there's more and more data, it becomes really important that you are able to deliver a multi-framework network because it delivers greater also resilience and the ability to actually have the capacity needed when you're connecting both entertainment, connectivity and the operational systems of any flight. So we're definitely seeing that. And what we would even more like to see in the future is with this increased ability, because you get the low latency, is how many of the systems that can actually improve both the experience but also the actual maintenance of the aircrafts, how that can get improved by actually connecting and having real-time data. So that is what we're really looking forward to be able to see the next step.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to add to that in terms of the connected aircraft. It was a huge topic quite a few years ago and then went a bit quiet. Now that we've got all these new solutions, it's really starting to ramp up. And I think we're seeing that in the industry. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think that is where the big push is now. So everybody is really talking a lot about in-flight connectivity. But I think being able to have these planes online and being able to have the data and also make sure that the data is secured and that they have these stable flows is going to become very key to making sure that you get an even more connected and even more digital flights.
Yeah, absolutely. David, from a private aviation perspective, what's happening there?
Well, I think just generally, the expectation around connectivity, certainly over the past 5 years, but really accelerated within the last couple of years since LEO really has, come to market. The expectation around our typical customer is just going through the roof, just in terms of, the usability, the capacity that they have available, and their ability to do what they do in their office, in their home, in their daily life, continued on the aircraft. We've spoken for so long about the office in the sky, and we've proudly pushed the networks at the cutting edge of what they're capable of. But in reality, the applications that our customers are using and the use cases that they have always been at the edge of the technology's capability. And so we're really at that point now where our customers' aircrafts, not just a time machine, but a business tool for those guys in many cases, or a place to unwind, relax. Now, the expectation is they can use all of those tools, whether that's, video calling, video conferencing, large file upload to the aircraft, VPNs, connecting to their infrastructure, all the way through to making sure they don't miss the game or whatever it may be on the flight, or entertaining the kids. That's now a reality on the aircraft, and so the expectation is that they can do that. Speed, I think now really, that's no longer the problem we're trying to solve, right? Because the networks are so capable. I think the real part where we sit in, and Eutelsat and our partners are really driving forwards the proposition to make sure that we have not only the speed, but the consistency, the reliability, the capacity to do what's needed. Effectively, I mean, if you're buying based on megabytes and not based on consistency of service, when it goes wrong, or when there is a challenge, or when there are different setups and configurations needed, you really can paint yourself into a corner if you don't have the right partner, the right network, the right infrastructure to support that. And so all of that to say, our customers are coming to us. They're more educated than they've ever been. They're more discerning than they've ever been. There are higher expectations than there ever been. But I think we're as best equipped as we've ever been to support their requirements.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, reliability, I think reliability means different things to different people. Me as a passenger, I want it fast, I want it free, and I want it to work. But I guess, over to Melanie to share some insight into the airlines' expectations and what they're thinking and what they're wanting providers to deliver.
Okay, so I have worked for 6 different airlines in my very short career, and had the privilege of working with pretty much all of the different connectivity providers. From a customer point of view, the expectations are exactly as you said, Corinne. People want to carry on their everyday lives. It's no longer kind of a nice to have, it's becoming an essential. And as technology is improving, customers are expecting it to be for free. So it's kind of resetting the bar. So, you get good Wi-Fi, or you have Wi-Fi, then you're giving it and you need to pay for it. But now the expectations are that it's going to be free. But they expect it to work. They don't understand what we've had in the past. People have paid quite a lot for Wi-Fi and it hasn't really worked. So they are very, very frustrated. So the expectations are that it will work the same as it does at home, which I think is very much here now, which is very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, Courtney, from an integrator perspective, what's the expectation there?
Yes, from an OEM perspective, our approach to reliability is a bit different, because we not only have to think about reliability in terms of service reliability, but also the reliability in terms of the way it can integrate into our aircraft. So when we approach, say, certification or qualification, for example, we need to ensure that our supplier partners can meet our specific design requirements based on our model, that they can deliver those design requirements reliably to ensure that our services are consistent regardless of supplier selection for our airline customers. And that there's also continuity in terms of communication around the evolution of some of what Melanie just referenced. We are seeing a lot of changes in passenger behavior. We alluded to earlier the office in the sky, and it is now not just when we think about reliability. internet connectivity or messaging. It's the entire experience and ensuring that our service providers can deliver the bandwidth, throughput, and latency expectations for our passengers. We're even evaluating how it manifests in new experiences on board. So we're showcasing an e-lounge concept in our booth this year that is very much an office in the sky, a privacy space. But when you are evaluating where that comes in the future, it then goes back to the question of reliability and how can the system maintain it. So it's not just the certification and getting it on board the aircraft, but it's partnering with our suppliers and our providers to ensure that that reliability maintains sustainable when we're evaluating what the needs of our passengers and airlines are going to be for the future.
Great point. Yeah, interesting. I wasn't, about your e-lounge. Yeah, great. So on that note, Melanie, in terms of measurement and measuring performance, so what are airlines looking at this stage?
So I think we are at a point where we kind of need to change. So the traditional contracts that we have had in the airlines has been very much focused around heartbeat to the aircraft. And actually the customer, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that people were connected. It doesn't mean that they were able to use it. And moving forward, it's not just about our customers. We will have connected crew. We'll be able to do real-time problem solving. The pilots will be able to use the technology to improve the route because of the weather. So we will become really, really reliant on the data as the technology improves. So I really believe that the way that we measure the connectivity right now needs to evolve and needs to change, because it's more about the experience, the speed, how many people are connected, how satisfied they are. I have spent many, many meetings where people will tell me, oh, there was a heartbeat to the aircraft. Okay, but why was nobody connected and why was the satisfaction really low? So I think as well as the same time that technology is changing and we're really going through this huge shift, which is really, really exciting, I think it's the moment when we need to think about changing how contracts are put together and how we measure the success of connectivity.
Great, thank you. So in terms of passenger experience, certification, deployment, how they intersect, how do you see that shaping the future, probably the immediate 2 to 5 years?
I'm welcome for you to take it first, but a couple of things I think first. Again, from the OEM perspective around certification, it's really more at the airplane level. And so from our standpoint at the OEM, it's standardizing the qualification requirements as much as possible to ensure that our suppliers have a very clear line of sight of how best to integrate to bring supplier options on board our aircraft as efficiently as possible. Deployment, we have our Boeing aerodynamic shroud, which is our custom and standard attendant fairing. So it's a sort of a new approach to the way that we're looking to integrate multi-Earth orbit and LEO solutions on board. That parlays directly with what I was talking about with certification. So for any of our LEO or multi-Earth orbit suppliers, the expectations, they fit within those distinct design requirements. And we think that will help with deployment from a service reliability and consistency standpoint in terms of service with our airlines.
Great, thank you. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, nothing for me.
No worries. Okay, so in terms of delivering continuity in the real world, and I'll put this out to the panel, how do we as providers and partners maintain service continuity in practice?
I can take that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Would you like to first?
No, happy to.
Sure. I think it's really important to have resiliency from our perspective. Back to the thesis of a frustrated passenger. So I'm a recovering frustrated passenger. It's getting better, which is great, but I think as an industry, we need to think about all layers of the value chain, not just the satellite ecosystem, but onboard infrastructure, antenna infrastructure, the wireless access points, all the way down to the user device. So anywhere in that chain, you could have a problem or a glitch or a bottleneck that leads to a frustrated situation. And I think there's the whole passenger experience aspect, but there's so much opportunity from an operational excellence maybe from an OEM perspective, engine data, cockpit data, other avionics data that could be ingested, either processed at the edge on the aircraft or in the cloud, for example. I think we're just now starting to deploy the types of networks that enable these experiences and enablements. So for the airline or for the OEM, I think there's just a huge amount of opportunity. You know, we were talking about megabits per second to the aircraft just a couple of years ago. We're about hundreds of megabits now, and you know, we have roadmaps to gigabits of capacity to the aircraft and from the aircraft, both directions. And you couple that with a highly resilient system, approaching very, very high reliability. So 99 point, higher. Whereas I think legacy systems struggle to even get to 95% or 96% availability. So from a connectivity ecosystem perspective, I'm actually confident that at least the architectures that we're bringing forward at Hughes will absolutely push us into that direction to add resiliency, add redundancy, and enable multi-constellation ingestion of capacity, having a highly resilient system of servers, access points, and avionics on board that LRUs on board rather, that could really create a situation where there's applications that we've not even contemplated that will become available. So again, I think we're in a really interesting time, and looking forward to the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And if I can ask, obviously the industry is complex. This isn't easy. Reza, do you have any insight into, how airlines are handling the complexity of this?
I will happily take Mel's input on this as well. But from an OEM perspective, there's a few ways that we're assessing this sort of conundrum of continuity. And when you think about our carriers that oftentimes have multi-model, Boeing or otherwise, those experiences can look, feel very different. So from the OEM side, I've got a couple of inputs. Continuity, again, going to a common aeroshroud, our Boeing aerodynamic shroud, a common infrastructure. So regardless what platform you're moving towards, you have sort of agnostic supplier solutions to make sure that service providers are consistent among all of our models. Providing that support also to our fleet, making sure that our retrofit and our Boeing Global Services team, as new line fit opportunities come on board, can support our customers to ensure that their fleet doesn't feel different than their new line fit aircraft. From another perspective, and I won't speak on behalf of my airline partners here, but some of the items we have heard is understanding passenger demographics and how those are changing. Really mining into who is flying and who is flying where. What are your demographics? For example, business travel and the private jet space, business aviation, how those passengers translate to a first class or premium class experience, and making sure that you're providing some level of continuity, not only in connectivity, but the experiences that are supported by connectivity. For example, segmentation is another great way that we've heard from a number of our airlines that they're looking to address continuity. So taking things in stages, addressing specific segments of the cabin that may or may not be more behind than others, to ensure that you're building in iterative continuity within your fleet. Again, that's from OEM feedback, and I really look to the mind behind that from the airline to confirm that, but that's what we've heard quite a lot from the market.
Yeah.
I think definitely that as the industry changes, what we are really looking for is to have something that means just like when you're at home and you don't want a particular provider anymore, you can phone up and change. But because of the technology, that's not possible. And as we progress and things move forward, it's about how we work together with all of the providers. Hopefully we'll get to a situation in the future where we won't need antennas, we won't need to put things on the aircraft that add weight, And that's what we're kind of trying to do, is to work with all of the different partners to try and push the industry to change. And, you know, maybe the future is antenna-less and it goes straight from the satellite to your phone on the aircraft. So we're really keen to work with as many different people as we can to try and change that, because everything that we have to put on the aircraft has a cost, has a weight, has fuel drag. In this crazy world we're living in right now, we need to make the aircraft as light as we possibly can. So we're really looking to push the boundaries and to really challenge things. And it's difficult because anything involving an aircraft takes a long time. Yeah. So, you know, those things will probably be retired by the time that happens. But that's what we're really trying to do, and try and change the way that things work, which I'm sure is coming.
Yeah, yeah. David, any insights from the
Yeah,
private
I mean,
side?
I think continuity really sits as one of the key challenges behind the overall experience, right? And I think the goal of us as a service provider is to put together packages, portfolios, our service offering, whether that's networks, hardware, the software that sits behind that, the support infrastructure that sits behind that, as a seamless wraparound, which is almost unnoticeable by the customer. As long as it works and the customer is getting what they want from the service that they're trying to access at that time, whether that's the network or whether that's through their router or whatever, as long as they don't feel that they're being held back by that technology, then, you know, that's what we're trying to achieve. And the continuity piece comes in because, you know, at any point, these solutions now are so complex, from the satellite constellations, the redundancy that's built into those to make sure that, you know, at a base level, the service level is at a really high standard in terms of delivery, to the aircraft where we have multi-orbit systems on board to, you know, react to different characteristics, to maybe different geographical locations, to different use cases on board, to different networks on board the aircraft, to different setups on board. All of that is designed to provide that continuous service to whoever it's deemed needs that, whether that's the principal passenger in the back to make sure that they've got unfettered access to the aircraft, or open to all and, you know, everybody has access. And so I think that that's the challenge, is the simplification of what the business, you know, the business aviation, the satellite providers are actually providing, yeah, and delivering it in a package which is accessible, friendly, understandable, and continuous for our clients. And that really is the challenge that we try and solve. And I think, we try and simplify that as much as we can. And I think that the experience of a customer shouldn't be measured in the SLA, it should be measured in their actual experience on board the aircraft.
Okay. Eva, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, and I think security goes really well along with this whole thing about being constantly available. And I think also what we're seeing today in the dialogues that we're having with the actual airlines is also this understanding that not only do you actually need to do multi-beams, you actually also need multi-providers. And I think that is becoming more and more present, at least it's evolving in the system. So we're basically seeing airlines starting to act like you would be acting if you were buying infrastructure on ground. So basically, if you go out and provide fibers to a data center, you will need access to some backup capacity, or you're going to need a resilient setup of some sort. So what we're seeing is that the airlines are actually coming in wanting to test different setups, because they need to ensure that it's not only about the continuity that you have on an individual tail, it will actually also be the ability to have some kind of differentiation maybe along your whole fleet, so that you have a solution that can actually work on some, even though it's not working on others, or whatever, you have the backup and you get the learnings that you need to have in order to be able to deliver an experience to the end customer, the end user, that is actually going to be both secure and very resilient, so you will actually have the capability to be always on, because this is becoming so central. Mm-hmm. And the more, again, back to the operational systems, the more of the operational systems that you cut into, the more important this becomes. So it is really a question of making sure that the multi-beam setup is becoming very present, and also making sure that maybe multi-vendor needs to go into the mix, so you do have different choices across your fleet.
Great, thank you. So I think we will go out to the audience for any questions. Okay, I'll start with the first one. How should we measure reliability? Is it through SLA or passenger experience or both?
From an,
I was going to say, I think I kind of touched on that earlier, where I think I think customer experience should be measured by the physical experience that they're having, as in good, bad, indifferent, whatever, regardless of the SLA that sits behind it. The SLA is so important in making sure we get there, but in terms of importance for our end customers, the SLA is a means to an end, not the be-all and end-all in terms of experience on board the aircraft.
It would probably go towards the operational side of it. That's where you would measure with the SLA.
Yeah, and I also touched on it as well, that, you know, it's been, from an airline point of view, it's been very much focused around heartbeat to the aircraft, but it's much better that we look at customer satisfaction, but also how many customers are connected, how long they stay connected, is it a continual connection, what is the experience like? So it's, I think the world has changed so much that it's time that we really look at it in a different way.
Yeah, and just to add on to both of their comments, you know, they're both hitting on quality of experience measurements, but that also translates into a lot of what Mel is touching on, which is net promoter scores. A lot of our airline partners use net promoter scores to understand how the level of loyalty, where they're going to see customers be repeat customers, where they're seeing detraction. And what we're seeing through some of our market research is connectivity is becoming a leading indicator, even behind flight reliability. So when you think about the level of importance that a passenger is placing when a delayed flight is just a few measures above the level of connectivity, that's extremely significant. And so, you know, calling to Mel's point around experience, continuity, how long they're connected, and if they are connecting and disconnecting, why?
Yeah, and just to add to that, in other airlines I've worked for where we've advertised that we've had connectivity, maybe we've leased in an aircraft that doesn't have it, customers write in to say if they'd have known there was no connectivity, they would have flown with another airline because they were planning on being connected to a meeting. So it's like becoming a real expectation. So it's important that we get it right.
And one of the things that, one of the things that we, you know, really try and impart as part of the upgrade process or delivery process of our aircraft is exactly to your point, is that expectation management. So a real part of what we do is that initial training, just really to make sure that, you know, when you're taking your new system with your aircraft or your new aircraft, you understand what it's capable of. You understand what's going to happen if X, Y, Z, or you're flying in a certain location or whatever it may be. Or if something goes wrong, we try and equip the crew on board so that they have some troubleshooting tools available to them, which feeds into that confidence in the connectivity on board. It feeds into the overall experience, and it's that expectation setting as well that helps with that.
And I think one of the important points that you're right now touching upon, which we haven't discussed so much, is basically on the crew. I think the ability to be connected and also on the crew systems, for example, you have the fraudulent behavior. If you don't have access, basically you won't be able to check the credit card. And so you might actually have a separate revenue stream that you're building in the connected flight, which is on connectivity. When connectivity isn't there, it opens up for the fraudulent behavior.
Yep.
So I think the ability for that to really be secured and always online is really important when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are more and more tools sitting within that network as well.
Exactly.
Which are beneficial to the crew on board the aircraft.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll go back out to the audience. Surely we have some questions.
0.
No questions?
Okay. Great. Anything else you'd like to add?
I can add. So I think around service reliability, so obviously there's the software component and the hardware component. And I would say, so Hughes has been in flight connectivity for 2 decades with row 44, what used to be row 44 in Southwest Airlines. And over the past 3-4 years, we were new in the direct-to-airline space. So we effectively leveraged 2 decades of experience in serving partners, and when we went direct, frankly, leveraging a lot of AI, ML, Gen AI now to create insights about what's happening not only at the network layer, but also at the LRU level on wing to create a much better passenger experience. So again, as a recovering, I always like to say this, as a recovering frustrated passenger, there's countless flights that I was on personally that I really needed to get something done. I had a DocuSign or I had something to approve or something to comment on and I couldn't. It's absolutely frustrating, especially if it's a longer flight. Anything more than an hour or 2 hours, and if you're not able to be connected, on one hand, it's kind of unfortunate, but it's kind of the world we live in. Really requires these resilient systems that enable you to do what you need to do on an aircraft, just like you do on the ground. So I think service reliability, not only at the hardware level, but also software level is very important. And then I think kind of putting this all together in a package, the Net Promoter Score is a great way of getting the customer sentiment about that particular service. And if it's dragging down the rest of your experience, well, I think it's much easier now and with the technology we have today than it was 5 years ago or even a decade ago. So I think from a Hughes perspective, we've invested a lot from a blank slate to relieve those choke points and pain points. And frankly, Gogo is a great customer of ours, and we're proud to have delivered over close to 700 ESAs in the past 14 months. Similarly, I think the feedback we're getting from a lot of the business aviation customers on the Eutelsat OneWeb network is astonishing. They love it. They love it. They love the experience. The low latency is amazing. The capacity, they can stream, they can do cloud applications. We're really in a great place, I think, from a ecosystem perspective with the work that a lot of folks on this panel have done to elevate the experience.
Fantastic, thank you.
I'd love to add, there was one comment there in the middle that Reza highlighted on that I can't help myself with my role. We're really involved in the market research and understanding insights, partnering with our airlines and third-party research firms to garner this insight. But you mentioned 1 to 2 hours. And I think that's interesting because there is this precedent or expectation that on wide bodies connectivity is standard. When you look at sort of narrow body global statistics, it varies very, very widely. But what we're starting to see, even if you drill that data down and just in the past 5 years, and even more specifically the past 2.5 years or so, right after post-COVID, is narrow body aircraft taking on a lot of behavior of wide body. The demand for aircraft and the capacity constraints that we're seeing with global travel is requiring our airlines to optimize their fleets in different ways. So that might be, for example, a larger narrow-body aircraft optimizing a longer stage length. That now parlays to those passengers have wide-body expectations. And so I just think it's important to highlight that oftentimes when we talk about the necessity around connectivity, it's typically framed in this long-haul stage length perception, but really it's evolving because of the ways our airlines are optimizing their networks and their fleets to get the best utilization out of their aircraft. So I wanted to flag that because you said 1 to 2 hours, and I went, that's a narrow body route, and you're starting to see those behaviors sort of bleed through the market.
And I think also adding on to that, what we're also seeing is, of course, because behavior is changing, there is definitely a pickup of the ability to sell connectivity as an add-on service. But for that to be an option, to buy that as an add-on to your ticket, it needs to get installed on the actual aircraft. But I think having that whole new system or business model, you can even call it, is becoming super key. So even when you're in the low-cost carrier segment, there is this necessity, or there can be the ask, to actually have the ability to connect because it's going to be important for the passenger experience, but they might not be willing to pay for it up front. But then suddenly you open up for a whole new revenue stream for the actual airline if you have the abilities to engage them on board. So that we're saying as well.
Absolutely.
Melanie.
No, I think just to add sort of some closing points, one of the biggest problems that I have personally right now is that to change to the new technology takes time, and it's very difficult to explain that to customers that, you know, they fly one day with something amazing, they're connected from the second they walk to the aircraft to the second they get off, and it's amazing, they watch Netflix, and the next day they get on and there's nothing. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now, is how we communicate that effectively to customers to keep them updated until a point where everything has changed, but I'm sure by then it will be on a new round, a new level. But how we communicate it, it's a very difficult jigsaw. So many things can go wrong. It's quite difficult to communicate, to make sure customers are aware, to explain to them when things don't go well, when it doesn't work. So yeah, they're the kind of things that we really need to be working on.
And David, anything you'd like to add from a private?
No, I guess just to add, you know, I think building on everything that's just been said, one of the really exciting parts of the technology in terms of the terminals and the networks and what that brings to the table is we're now able to offer that office in the sky experience to a PC-12 or a Phenom 300 or much smaller airframes just because of the advancements that we have in the technology. And so the expectation that when we talk about business aviation customers, we often think of, you know, them flying their Gulfstreams, BBJs, whatever it is around. But that could quite easily be now setting the expectation for the guy who flies himself around in his PC-12, for example, or whatever it may be. So the accessibility of the technology means that we're creating much more opportunity for us, much more challenges for us to be able to solve, but an exciting times in terms of, you know, the opportunity mushrooming in terms of the accessibility of this type of technology.
Definitely.
It's in a place where it's never been before, and we're really proud through Galileo and the services that we offer to be able to, you know, stand at the forefront of that with our partners.
Great, thank you. 5 minutes. I'll go back out to the audience. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or any questions? Yes, we have one over here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Christian Schnieser and I'm working for Airbus, but I'm speaking here as a client of the airlines. I have one question. When do you think the connectivity topic becomes really standard for everybody on board? I mean, I was listening to your conversation, so right now you try to jump the hurdles you have, but when is it really becoming standard? Like in a hotel, checking in, you know, immediate access, no complex registration process, jumping from one aircraft to the other when your connection. How much time do you give yourself or the airlines?
Well, it's really for you. I would say definitely from a long haul point of view, from a wide body point of view, the expectation is there now. I said before that all of our customers expect to be connected. They expect to carry on their everyday lives. So I think we're there, and I think many airlines are working towards that, making it seamless and easy. I think all of the technology that's coming now will enable that to happen. I work for a low-cost airline now. Is it a necessity? No, but customers definitely appreciate it and come back because they know that they're going to be connected on board. I don't know if anyone...
I could add, I would say, totally agree with the wide body. In fact, really, across the board, if there's a way to solve the economics, and it's getting better, I would say, we're very close. I think the demand is absolutely there. Passengers want to be connected. It's somewhat regional as well, we see. In some regions, I think you have a higher impetus than other regions, but I think that's shifting as well. just worldwide, again, post-COVID, to your point, there's an insatiable need for connectivity, and a big part of it is the hardware infrastructure and the challenges with the fleet-wide rollout. We've invested a lot of time and energy, and I'd invite you to our booth, which is like right down the hall here. And I think we have a happy hour too, so please, everyone's invited. We'd love to show you how we're doing that, because I think, again, it goes back to the entire ecosystem. It's got to be cost effective. You have to have the right networks. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things, but I feel that we're very close. I maybe not directly answering, is it 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but I think we're very close. There's an impetus towards reliable, high-speed, low-latency connectivity. And if you have the right recipe, if you will, I think, I think your company is also working hard, as Boeing is, to make it easier for airlines, which we appreciate. I mean, as a service provider, as a ESA manufacturer for these very sophisticated antenna systems, and our overall integrator, getting the equipment onto aircraft is absolutely a part of the recipe. So we're going to be cooking up really good connectivity really soon. I mean, we're doing it today at scale. So.
Yeah, and I think you hit on one other element of this as well, that it's not just the low latency and connectivity, and Mel touched on it. It's the entire experience. So it's now the login, the passenger experience, how they engage, how long they continue to engage. And so it's no longer if the technology is there. 4 or 5 years ago, that was more of the conversation, is can we deliver this? Now we know we can, and it's how do we deliver it, and then how do we as an OEM partner with our airlines and service providers to ensure that the landing page, the passenger experience, the login, the VPNs, the security is all well integrated. And I think that's where a lot of the market's focus, and in my opinion, is starting to shift, is getting into those finite details that can be the pebbles in your shoe, if you will, for the passenger experience.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for joining us and for offering those insights. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.